Hi guys, my name is Bobby and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm doing my December wrap-up. So now in the month of December I read 6 books. I read mostly physical. I only read one on Kindle, I believe, and that was it. I had a pretty decent reading month. Like, the beginning of the month was a little bit slow to start and kind of hit a little mini slump, and then kind of took off in the last half of the month. But let's just get into the books. So the first couple books I want to talk about are 2 that I'm currently working on that I didn't quite make it. And the first book that I didn't quite finish was Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This is my first foray into Brandon Sanderson, and I'm really enjoying it. I was trying really hard not to force myself through the book. Like, and I don't mean force and like it's hard to read or I'm not enjoying it, but it's it's not super intricate, but it's an intricate enough fantasy world that I really want to pay attention and not miss out on anything, because it's got this really intricate, fun magic system based on metals. So let's see, I'm about right there. So this edition, like, I got a box set for Christmas of the trilogy, the Mistborn trilogy, and I didn't realize they were trade paperbacks or whatever, or the is that what they're called? The small little dinky paperbacks, and I didn't realize that, but it's fine. They're easy to read. So I'm on page 276, and there is 643 in this book, so I'm about a third of the way through. Really enjoying it, but I'm just trying to take my time with it. And the next book that I am close to finishing, well, not close, this is another 600-page something book, and I'm about 220 pages in, is Obsidian by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This is book 3 in the Illuminae Files trilogy. As you will see, I read Gemini this month, and immediately after reading it, I really wanted to read Obsidian. Of course, my library doesn't have Obsidian in hard copy, which is the preferred way for me to read the Illuminae Files, because with it being mixed media, like when I read Illuminae, it took me the 3rd time trying to read it in order to read it, because I had bought it for my Kindle, and just the format on Kindle, like the way it is on my tablet, it like made the font like so tiny on like the dossier parts, and you know, like trying to zoom in and zoom out just doesn't work in a Kindle form, in an ebook form. It just didn't work right. So that's why I bought the first one, read Gemini in physical form, but the only way to get Obsidian, unless I wanted to order it online and wait forever for it to get here, was it was available in my library immediately to check out on ebook. So I did that, and I'm, you know, it's hard, a lot of squinting, but I've made it 200 pages through, and I'm really enjoying that one as well. That one I will probably finish in the next 2 days. It'll probably be one of the first books I finish in 2019. Okay, now into the actual books I read in December. The first book I read was My Buddy Read with Vicky at chapter 32, and that was Rose Madder by Stephen King. This is a reread for me. It was not a reread for her. I gave it 5 stars again. I believe she gave it 4. Rose Madder is a book about a woman who is in a very highly abusive relationship, and her husband is a police officer, and she decides to leave him. And she leaves him and gets on a bus and goes 500 miles away, 700 miles away to a really big city, and kind of gets lost in the city. There's a lot of people that help her along the way, and then you get the little supernatural element that comes in. I won't spoil it, because if I tell you what it is, it kind of ruins it. But to me, this is my favorite Stephen King, because it's different than his other books. It's not, the fear to me isn't like monster scary or alien scary. It's like, this shit could actually happen. There are women every day who have abusive spouses, family members, whatever, that they have to escape from. And that's what her husband is. And it's very, very real. Like, the scariness of that. And the fear is compounded with the fact that he's a police officer. Because, you know, that in and of itself makes it scary. Because who are you going to call? The people you're going to call are his companions and comrades that he works with every day. Who are they going to believe? Kind of deal. But it is really good. It's well written. I just love the way Rose is written. She's just, I don't know, there's just something about her, like, and it's weird because the first time I read this I was like 15, 14, something like that, I can't remember, and it's not like I could relate to Rose at all, but I just really loved her, and it's just, I love her story. This is really, really good. I mean, trigger warnings for spousal abuse, obviously. He's very brutal, so if that is trigger for you, do not read this book. But it is my favorite Stephen King. I really want Natasha for My Reading is Odd and Samantha Leanne from Leanne's Lit to get to this, because they're reading Stephen King in publication order, not together, separately, and I want them to get to Rose Madder because I'm so curious to see what they think. But this came out in the early 90s, so it's going to take them a while to get there. but I really loved it. It was really fun buddy reading it with Vicky, and it was, considering this was a reread for me, she would message me and be like, oh my god, I wonder what's going to happen here, and it's like I had to bite my tongue because I knew what was coming, you know, and I'm a really terrible secret keeper most of the time anyways. So, but she was surprised and she enjoyed it. I believe she gave it 4 stars as well. I think she gave it 4 stars. I gave it 5. But it's my favorite. And so I know at least she enjoyed it. But this is the only book I reread this year because I'm not much of a rereader, but this one I think I've reread 4 times now, and I was happy to finally I was happy to reread it so that Vicky could read it. The next book I read was Grayson Fury by Tracy Banghart. When I finished Rose Matter, I kind of went into a slump. I literally started 4 books and had no desire to finish any of them. And Grayson Fury came in as a hold from the library. That's why I don't have it. I don't have a physical copy. It became due in the middle of December and I had to turn it back in. So Grayson Fury came in at the library, so I went and picked it up and I read it in 2 sittings, I think. And absolutely loved it. Kind of pulled me out of my slump. Grayson Fury is a young adult fantasy novel that takes place in a world where they've kind of reverted. Not like, especially when it comes to women's rights, not reverted as much as like, you know, The Handmaid's Tale. But in this world, like, women don't hold much value at all. Their value is either to make babies or to work until they die. And like, this world is very poor. It seems everybody works until they die. It's a very kind of bleak world, and the world building was okay, but I mean, the only sense you get is that it's a very bleak world. So in this story, we follow 2 sisters, Serena and Nomi. Serena's the older sister by a couple years, I believe. And for Serena's entire life, she's been trained to be a Grace. Now, in this world, you have the king, and the king has what he calls Graces. Now, to me, the Graces are pretty much just like having concubines. That's pretty much all they're there for. So he has all these Graces that they spend time with him. He sleeps with them. They give him children. His head Grace, he has one that he considers his head Grace, and she's the only one that can bear him legitimate heirs. But so it's a very great privilege to be chosen as a Grace, because then you get to live in the palace. You're pampered. I mean, yes, you have to follow these strict, rigid rules, but you kind of get to live the life of luxury, whereas everybody else kind of lives in squalor and poverty. So Serena's trained her whole entire life to be a Grace, and her sister Nomi has trained to be like her handmaiden. So they would both get to go to the palace, and Nomi would get to serve her sister as a handmaiden, but the sisters would still get to be together. So Serena is chosen to go to the palace to, you know, be met with the prince, because the crown prince is coming of age, so it is his turn to pick his Graces, his first couple of Graces. Because they keep picking them. Whoever is king just keeps picking them throughout his life. And the king is ill and is about to die. So his son, his, you know, heir apparent, is going to choose his first Graces. So Serena's chosen to go to the palace to this ball so that the prince can see all of, I think there's like 20 or 25 women. I think he picks 3. Yes, he picks 3 to be his first Graces out of the 3. Or out of the 25. So they go, and Nomi goes with her to be her handmaiden. And during the ball, Serena's in there and mingling around and doing what she needs to do as a Grace, as she is taught to be very graceful and eloquent and quiet. It reminds me very much of like Victorian times, where you were to sit down, shut up, and you're just there to look pretty and to lay down and be there for sex. It's very, very regressed. Like, you do not have an opinion. And so Nomi is walking to the bathroom, I believe, and she sees a library. And in this world, it is illegal for a woman to know how to read. If you are found out to be a woman and you are able to read, it is punishable by death. And Nomi knows how to read because her brother taught her how to read. Now Serena, because she is a true Grace and, you know, and how she does everything, she does not know how to read. But Nomi wants to learn. She wants to go to school, like, and do all this stuff, and she's not allowed to go to school because she is a female. On the way, she runs into the crown prince and his younger brother, and she's very startled. And Nomi is one of these people that she has no filter, and she has a hard time, you know, minding her mouth the way she should be in this world. But long story short, when it is time to choose the Graces, instead of Serena being chosen, Nomi is chosen to be his Grace. And the sisters get turned on their heads. So you've got Nomi, who has never been trained to be a Grace. She has no idea. She hates it. Hates the whole idea of it. Now has to fit into this mold that her sister has trained her whole life to be. And now Serena's going to be her handmaiden, and within a day or two of Nomi being a Grace, something else happens, and Serena is shipped off. And now Serena's on this island that is like a prison island, pretty much, kind of like, think Alcatraz, only it's full of women, and it's guarded by the King's Guards, like a hodgepodge of the King's Guards, and the King's Guards make these women fight to the death once a week for funsies. So the whole story is, you know, Nomi and Serena being separate, and both of them being flipped on their heads and having to live totally different from what they're used to. And I really loved it. Like, I know that this book had got mixed reviews, but I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of female empowerment with their being so suppressed, and they've been so suppressed for so long, and standing up against that suppression. And I'd heard some other book reviewers like DNF it and say that, you know, they thought it was too tropey, and I didn't really think it was that tropey at all. And most young adult fantasy I tend to find tropey. I liked. Granted, the stuff on the island with the fighting to the death seemed slightly, just a little taste of the Hunger Games, but not, because it wasn't everybody kill all. It was, you know, once you get there, they kind of sort you into these different groups, and there's these different little groups all over the island that are run by one woman in each one, and so they kind of have these little teams, and then I don't know, it's just kind of interesting how that's done. It was interesting watching Nomi have to be good and act like her sister, and the separation of the sisters was a big part of the story because they're so close, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I really loved it. To me, it's like kind of a different take on the fantasy thing, but it did have a lot of female empowerment. The second book comes out sometime in 2019, and I'm really excited to read it. The next book I finished in the month of December were The Woods Are Dark by Richard Lehman. I'm not going to talk about it here. I did a whole book review. If you'd like to go watch that, I'll link it down below. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I finished in the month of December was my book of the month pick for December, and that's No Exit by Taylor Adams. No Exit is a thriller which takes place in the middle of nowhere. So it's about this girl named Darby, who is traveling home to Utah, I think. Yeah, because she's traveling through the Rockies in Colorado. I'm pretty sure she's going home to Utah. So, but she's traveling through the Rocky Mountains, and in this little piece of shit Honda, and a big, huge blizzard comes through, and so she has to stop at this rest stop, like almost to the summit, like going over. And they're totally snowed in, and she's stuck there overnight. It is Christmas Eve, so this ends up kind of being a Christmassy read, which I did not realize. I just thought it was a winter read. But she's stuck with 4 other people in this rest stop, and they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're snowed in. It's frickin' freezing. She goes outside to try to get a signal on her phone because she's trying to text her sister, because the reason she's rushing home isn't because it's Christmas. It's because her mom just found out she has pancreatic cancer and she's going in for surgery, so she's trying to get home. So she goes outside to try to get signal on her phone because, of course, there's no signal out there. And her phone's dying because she forgot to charge it. It's at like 14%. And she walks by this van that she is parked next to out in the rest stop. And she sees this little dog crate in the back. And she sees a little girl who is locked in this dog crate. And then the story really takes off from there. This has one of kind of my favorite thriller tropes. Whole bunch of people trapped in the middle of nowhere with no way to get out or no way to get help. And one of them's a psycho. It makes for fun. It was a really fast read. I read it in 2 sittings. It wasn't like it's something new that I haven't read before, but the setting is what made it really interesting and new. I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Darby was a pretty good protagonist considering she's college age. I tend to not like a lot of teenager college age people in thrillers. They tend to be really whiny. Darby was really awesome. I really liked her gumption, and it's really interesting not knowing who you're going to trust. And as the story unfolds, like, it was really good. Like, I highly suggest you read it if you really are looking for a wintry thriller read. This is perfect. The next book I read in the month of December was The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia Hand. And unfortunately, this was a DNF for me. And I feel really bad because everybody who's been reading it seems to love it. And it's not that the story wasn't good. I DNF'd it around 120 pages. It was so cheesy. Like, and I just could not handle the cheese. I just couldn't handle the cheese. So this tells the story of Holly Chase. And she is a 17-year-old girl who has, her dad is like a big, huge movie director, like think Steven Spielberg status, like really famous, tons of money, and she's a spoiled, rotten brat. And she treats everybody like absolute garbage. And so on Christmas Eve, she gets visited by the three ghosts, just like Scrooge did. And, you know, after she does all that, she's like, yeah, whatever, this is bullshit, like, this is stupid. And so she doesn't change her ways, and within a week, she's dead. And she, which is really funny how she dies. Like, she's just comes out of yoga class, I think. And this woman who was, I think she was talking on her cell phone or doing something, like, in a convertible, like, swerves and, like, knocks over a whole bunch of tables and hits her on the sidewalk. Like, it was silly. This is a retelling of Scrooge's tale. Like, and I always can't remember the name. Like, it's by Charles Dickens. Why can't I remember the name? But so after she dies, she is, her ghost goes to this building where she becomes a part of Project Scrooge, where she becomes the new ghost of Christmas Past. And she has to keep being the ghost of Christmas Past every single year. So what I liked about this was the premise, like being a part of Project Scrooge, and it's kind of like her punishment for not changing. She now has to be a part of helping all these other Scrooges change their ways, and by being the ghost of Christmas Past. And, like, I liked Holly. Like, she was okay. I liked that she was unlikable, and then, you know, she was kind of working on herself, and I could see that she was getting some character growth, and by the end of the book, she would have had a lot of character growth. But it was so laid on with the Christmas cheese, and Christmas is not my favorite holiday to begin with, and with the layers of the Christmas cheese were like, I felt like I was drowning in a vat of nacho cheese. I couldn't do it. And I DNF'd it. Like, it got to the point where I was not looking forward to picking it up. So it wasn't that it was terrible. It wasn't the book, it was me. Like, I just couldn't handle the cheesiness in here. I could see exactly where it was going. Like, when we meet up with her in Project Scrooge, she's finishing up the Scrooge of that year. And then they were getting the new Scrooge for the next year. And he is her age, and he's hot, and he's rich, and all this. I'm like, I see where this is going. She's going to fall in love with him while she changes him. And it'll give her a second chance at life. And she'll be resurrected somehow. Or he'll die and be with her. It'll be some cheesy ass, you know, Christmassy, everybody lives happily ever after. And I could kind of see it was going that way. And I didn't want to do it. But don't let me discourage you from reading it. I didn't rate it because I DNF'd it. I didn't think it was fair to rate it. It seems like I liked the way the story was set up, and I liked the premise and the retelling, but I just could not handle the cheese factor. And the last book that I finished in the month of December, it literally came in, the last day I could pick it up was the 26th. That came in right before Christmas. It was a hold at the library, and I was like, oh my god, like, I have to go get it because I don't want the hold to expire because I've waited 2 months for it. And that's Gemini by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I read this in 2 sittings. And she a beast. She's not small. And what is it, 670 pages, 80 pages? 70? Yeah, it ain't small. This is book 2 in the Illuminate Files trilogy. And what's really interesting is, like, watching other reviews of the Illuminate Files, a lot of people hate Gemini. They think Gemini is their least favorite. And I disagree. I like Gemini way more than I liked Illuminate. Like, I love Katie and Ezra in Illuminate and the way the story is, but I love Gemini's story better. Gemini takes place on, well, this is, if you know, you've heard me talk about it, you've probably heard this before. The Illuminate Files trilogy is a space opera told in mixed media format which takes place over 3 books. And this is like, they're kind of companions that are all linked. So you have Illuminate, where you're following Katie and Ezra. There's always a male and a female protagonist, you know, that you're following in each one. It's always usually their love interests of each other. So it's Katie and Ezra in book 1, and you follow them and their escape from the bombing of their planet Carenza and being chased by this really nasty high-tech industries. In Gemini, and it takes place on Heimdall Station, which is where Katie and Ezra and their ship is trying to get to. So when Gemini opens, it's right after or a little bit before, like, some of the events of Illuminate. Like, some of them happen, like, right at the same time, and you can see, based on the time and the dates, like, the parallel. And so you're like, oh, okay. And so, like, you know, Katie and Ezra are trying to get to this Heimdall Station, where on Heimdall Station you have Nick and Hannah is the daughter of the captain who runs the station, and the station has a big wormhole in the middle, and it's their jump station to be able to jump, like, hyperspace to go to different universes and stuff like that. And then Nick is part of a crime family called the House of Knives, and he is a drug dealer. He's not an addict. He deals what they call dust. And to me, it almost kind of seems like it's hallucinogenic, but it's not like meth. It kind of seems like a mix between like acid and shrooms, maybe, the way it's described in the book. But Hannah and Nick, like, they're not dating. He's her dealer because she buys drugs from him to give to her friends, and she's dating somebody else, and they kind of connect, and it's also told in mixed media. And then their Bitech Industries is coming to the Heimdall station because they know, like, any survivors from the original attack, like the people from Illuminae, are on their way there, so they want to make sure that they erase all evidence of their attack on that planet. So there's a group of 24 guys from Bitech, and they're like assassin-like guys, and they show up to take over and subdue the station and get some, and they have some plans or whatever. Well, Hannah and Nick interfere with the plans, and so they're the main characters who are trying to thwart this. And then towards the last third of the book, the characters from Illuminae finally show up, and so then the stories merge. And now that I'm reading Obsidian, you've got everybody from Gemini and Illuminae together, and then then you've got a couple more from Obsidian. So that's kind of how it sets up. You got a male and female protagonist in each one, and you get a new one in Gemini and a new one in Obsidian, and all the stories, like, all the characters come together. Like, the people from Illuminae came and picked up the Gemini people, and then now they're going to go and pick up the Obsidian people. Like, it's kind of like they'll all come together eventually. I really, really loved it. I flew through it. I really think this one is better. I think I just liked Hannah and Nick better than Katie and Ezra. I think Ezra I just found a little bit too whiny for my taste. I liked Katie okay, but Katie was kind of like chip on her shoulder too much, where I found Hannah and Nick to be a little bit more down to earth. I just liked their personalities better, I think. I think I clicked better with Hannah and Nick than I did Katie and Ezra. And even in reading Obsidian, I still feel the same way. But Obsidian would definitely be like the first book I finished. 5 stars, obviously. Like, I was just so excited. I mean, when you read 670 pages in 2 days, granted it's mixed media and some of them are, kind of half-length pages, but still, loved it. I can't believe I slept on this series for so long. Okay, guys, that's it. That is my December wrap-up. Those are the 6 books that I read this month. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books and if you enjoyed any of them and what your thoughts were, and I will see you guys later. Bye.